Well, and I think that's the thing, Alex. For those who believe the Republican propaganda machine, there's no getting them back. If you don't believe your eyes, your ears, your common sense, I can't help you, and nothing's going to change your mind. You've decided, you've made a conscious decision to align your worldview with conspiracy theorists and nonsense. You're gone. Forget about it. I don't even think that the point of all of this necessarily is to change people's minds. I think it's more important that for the sake of our country, for the sake of democracy, we need to have a full airing of what happened, how we got here, and more importantly, how we can learn from the path that brought us to an insurrection attempt and avoid it in the future. And I think that's what the committee is setting out to do.
Yeah. So, Adrian, the same question to you, though, with this focus. Will this move the needle at all for voters? Or do voters care more about kitchen table issues like inflation and $5 plus gas prices?
Well, Alex, it's a little bit of both. I think this is certainly going to affect some voters. And look, it doesn't have to affect that many voters, right? We need to make sure that there are key voters in swing states, especially some of those suburban voters and independent voters who will ultimately decide what happens in the midterm. So it doesn't have to, affect 30 to 40% of the electorate. It has to focus on and affect, a very key subset of voters. I think the power of these hearings, though, Alex, is that we've been reading for, the last year and a half, essentially, since the insurrection took place, bits and pieces of information and evidence. What these hearings are doing is putting everything together and creating a narrative during primetime television to really educate the American people on what happened. And to Kurt's point, I think that's the most important thing, because for historical purposes and for just simply educating the American people and the world, frankly, on what happened, that's the importance of these hearings, so that we can have documented evidence and a real narrative that is easy to understand and easy to digest when watching all of this unfold. I think that's the most important part of these hearings.
Well, let's take a listen, and I'll start with you, Hugo, on this as to the Republican response, some of it, to what the hearing has put out there. Let's go to Congressman Jim Banks, who tweeted, "No trial or committee hearing that doesn't present differing points of view can be legitimate." Congresswoman Elise Stefanik tweeted, "The American people saw what lame duck Speaker Nancy Pelosi's Select Committee for what it really is, a political witch hunt designed to punish Pelosi's political opponents." I mean, can Republicans make that argument? Can they say it's all politics here? Because they're saying there's no other side. Yet they are the ones who rejected a 9/11 style bipartisan commission, possibly because they didn't want Americans to see the results of the investigation. What do you think about that, Hugo?
Yeah, look, I think that's right? I mean, Republicans, first of all, knocked down the idea of having a 9/11 style commission, as you say. But then after Pelosi said we can't have members who were involved in January 6th sit on the January 6th panel, and then offered House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy to appoint new picks, McCarthy turned around and said, well, I'm not going to engage with this at all, and pulled all of his cooperation or all of his engagement with the committee. And so it's kind of his fault that there are no Republican minority members on the committee. I think the broader point, though, is Republicans love to say that this committee is illegitimate and that it's a partisan panel and that it's a witch hunt. But Trump-appointed judges disagree with that at every level, at the D.C. district, appellate court level. And Judge Carter, in one of the cases, has unequivocally said that it agrees with the Select Committee that Trump engaged in multiple felonies to overturn the election, such as defrauding the United States and conspiring to obstruct a congressional certification. The fact of the matter is Republicans don't like to attack the substance of what the committee has uncovered. They like to attack the process, because there is no way to counter-program against the fact that Trump really did try and overturn the election, even though everyone knows he lost.
Well, in fact, Kurt, Republicans are handling these hearings as kind of one of two ways, right? You have the faction who wants to ignore the proceedings altogether. There's the other that thinks some direct counter-programming is necessary. What do you make of these strategies? Because as we've reported, 20 million people watched that hearing Thursday night, and I know Republicans who watched it. They were stunned. There were a couple who said they were ashamed at how their party has tried to downplay January 6th.
Yeah, they can try to run away from this, pretend like it's not happening, create an alternate world for some of their base to try to ignore all of this. But the reality is that's not possible. We live in a time now where everybody in this country that has a mobile phone has the ability to watch the key moments of this hearing. It's not necessarily as important that everybody tunes in live, but think about all the impressions and views that these key clips, whether it was Bill Barr or Jared Kushner or Ivanka Trump, all of those moments have been regurgitated and seen on social media. Even people who watch Fox News, they're on Twitter. Even people who don't like what's going on with January 6th are still seeing the information somehow. So it's just not plausible for Republicans to try to pretend like this isn't happening. And I have a suspicion that as these proceedings continue, and as we hear more from these videotaped depositions, remember, they have a library of hours of depositions. More than 1,000 were conducted with people that were in the White House, with people who were aligned with the Republican Party, with people who worked for Donald Trump in the campaign. And those are going to come center stage as these hearings progress.